Today's show is brought to you by Kegconnection.com. Purchase all of your homebrewing supplies and draft beer equipment with everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping at Kegconnection.com. Like the brand new True to Style recipe kit, a delicious German Weiss beer. It, along with every other True to Style recipe, is on sale right now for 25% off at Kegconnection.com. Go to Kegconnection.com, use our promo code HHH, and you're going to receive 5% off your order. That's Kegconnection.com, promo code HHH.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Hey, welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question that you would like discussed on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the Submit a Question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I am joined by the Director of Operations at CMBecker.com, Mr. James Carlson, as well as the President and Chief Keg Washer at Kegconnection.com, Mr. Todd Burns. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing today?
Good. We're doing great.
Awesome.
I love those short and sweet. Are you getting luncheon? Did I disturb your lunch? Poor Jim.
No. I took care of that earlier.
Oh, okay.
I don't miss lunch.
Okay, I didn't know. I saw at first. I thought that you had food in your mouth, and I wasn't going to get after you. I was going to apologize and say I'm terribly sorry because you were working just now, and Todd and I were like, "Where's James? Oh, where's James?" And when people don't respond immediately, we just make up scenarios. Todd was going the route of maybe is he okay? And I was like, oh, James. He's just known for goofing off and taking naps and playing video games during the workday. We know that stereotypical James Carlson, but
that's Josh Brown, I thought.
Yeah, other Josh, the other Josh. That's right, not this.
Hey, I was putting my brew table at lunch.
I love that. Yeah.
The last little bit of finish work before I epoxy the top, and we'll be brewing Friday, right, James?
That's right. I brought your hose. I have your hose today for the lines. So
cool.
I don't know of anything else we need. We're going to be ready to rock and roll.
That stuff. We had some electrical stuff that was supposed to be here overnight. So I think it'll be here today.
Oh, for the leads going to the elements. Yeah.
So I should be able to build those and epoxy, and we'll be maybe put another coat on tomorrow, and we'll be ready to go.
Yeah. That'll at least give it 48 hours to dry before we set those pots on it.
There were so many euphemisms I could or talk. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's our dynamic, Todd. It's just there's just a gross way sometimes you say words. But yes, you were talking about a brew table.
I don't understand what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm sorry. I take what you say sometimes and make it gross in my head.
It's not as bad as last night when I sent the first photograph out. Right after I'd finished the whole woodworking on it, I was like, I finished my breeding table.
I read brewing table.
Josh Brown was here, and he's like, dude, you said breeding table, not brewing table. I was like, oh crap, I'm never going to live that down.
Yeah, it was. I saw the reply.
And the funny part was like, I was like, I finished my breeding table. It'll hold like 8,000 pounds. I got a lot of weird comments about that, I'll have to tell you.
Yeah, and maybe some body shaming going on about you. But anyway, that's a different episode. Your brew table, that is great. Let's start off with that because I do. I will add photos to this show notes at homebrewhappyhour.com. You are quite the DIYer. You and James share that a lot in common. James, I think maybe more so has a little bit more engineering spirit in him, where Todd's not afraid to spend some money on things if it's outside of his wheel well, where James is like, no, I will make it inside my wheel. Like James masters crafts for the sake of DIY. But Todd, lately, I've been really impressed, not only at the brew system that y'all are putting together, the bots specifically that you and James are putting together is phenomenal. I can't wait to do a video on it. But your actual setup, like, James, we were like, hey, you could buy the table for that spot there to work good. And you're like, no, I'll just make one, because you started making It's not the same table that you had for your sink, right? You made a whole
that's the back bar, and I'm not done with it yet, but I moved this ahead of it because I was working on the chicken coop for the few weeks before that, and so I stopped all work on the back bar, and then I'm now in the brewing system, and I'll get back to the back bar soon. So
that's what I mean. You have so many projects going on. I'm a little jealous of the manliness I'm surrounded by with you and James any given day. Y'all,
no comment. So on the table, the reason I wanted to build my own is because I overbuild stuff when I build it out of wood, like 2x6s and 2x4s and 1 1/4 inch thick OSB top that's
treated.
That's gonna have epoxy over the front. Anyway, we bought a brew table and we were like, man, this is a great deal, stainless steel brew table. Well, it kind of sags in the middle and it's really annoying. So this one will hold up like an M1 tank. So
yeah, and it's gonna look good too.
Yeah,
and it might work as a breeding table if things don't work out.
Never know what's going to happen in life. Yeah,
you really have done. I was impressed not only by the quality of it, but you kind of turned it around quick, man. Like when you have your mind set on something, you just get it done. You're not one to linger. It's like I said, it's admirable because what was the turnaround on that? A couple of days?
Yeah, I just worked it. I've been working on it like 3 or 4 hours a night when I get home.
Right. And like I said, you had the chicken coop already going on. That's where, if it's not beer related, but maybe I'll throw in photos of that anyway with the show notes, just so people can, I think it's nice to brag on you every now and then. I don't mind throwing you under the bus, but I never brag on you on air. But the chicken coop was what I was super impressed with. You and Vilver, who is an employee, he's been there almost as long as I have. Working for you. You and Vilver did an incredible job on that chicken coop.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it looks good. Looks real good.
But enough sucking up to the boss.
We'll do that on chicken coop talk.
That's right. Yeah. Well, what a good time to announce our second podcast. Chicken talk. Maybe that's a forum. Maybe we could talk to Keith about working together with. You got homebrew talk, Keith. Maybe you need chicken chat. It's my weekly reminder that HomebrewCon registration is up and running. Still don't have a booth number assigned to us yet, but I did yesterday just get confirmation emails that we are all officially registered. So I've got badges for you guys. It's not just pretend or hypothetical anymore. We are officially registered. They took our money like a week ago, but now they've made it official that we are going to be there in Providence, Rhode Island, June the 27th through the 29th. If you can make it, please come and join us. We will have free stuff to give away. Once we have a booth number, like I said last week, we will have the sign-up sheet for you on homebrewhappyhour.com. And so if you're at the show, you can come by the booth, tell us your name. You might have to tell us that I'm your favorite guest or co-host on the show, but little details like that, and then we'll give you something in return. But it is a good time. We always have a blast. HomebrewCon is easily, and I'm beating a dead horse, but it's easily our favorite show of the year, and we can't wait to see you. And I will speak for Todd and James when I say that. We're very excited about this.
Oh, yeah.
Which is leading me into my next segue is y'all are going to brew on Todd's system this Friday, right?
Yep.
Are y'all brewing beer for the show on it, or what are y'all going to brew as the pilot batch? What is it going to be?
We talked about doing the lemon drop Pilsner. We did that last Friday, and it's coming along very good. I don't know, Todd. Whatever. It's his system, so it's his choice.
I don't know. I mean, we've overbrewed Kolsch, but I went to get a beer for dinner last night, and
that's the worst sound in the world.
Excuse me? Are you serious?
Yeah, there's no beer for you, buddy. You're going to be drinking wheats and winter warmers when you visit.
I'm okay with that. The Weiss beer. I will say this. This isn't just a salesy ploy, because I think people know wheat beer is not one of my favorite styles. It is doable because it's not punch you in the face banana. Like that's what that's what, you know what I mean, James? Sometimes
or Clovey or
Clovey. Yeah. That's what sometimes gets me about Hefeweizens or wheat beers. I think I guess that's an American style wheat beer, is to make it very banana forward.
I think so.
So that's not why it's not. That is why it's typically not my go-to beer.
Maybe a pale ale, like a nice balanced pale ale. When's the last time we brewed one of those?
Long time. So long I can't remember.
I mean, not an IPA, but just a regular pale ale.
Yeah, that's fine with me. You just tell me what you want, and I'll get the recipe.
I love it. I love it.
What are you in the mood for? You're the one that drinks all my beer, so.
No, the camera wasn't on me when you said we overbrewed Kolsch, because I rolled. I thought through the camera so that everyone could feel it. I'm always. Oh, I don't know if we have. I know you don't have Kolsch. You had one at the office that needed to be kegged. I don't know if that ever happened. If you.
Well, I would like to brew another alt, but I don't think I want to brew that the first time. I want to brew something fairly simple so we can test out the equipment, you know?
Yeah.
Another ASB would be wonderful for me.
And I don't know, we're not going to have the chiller yet, so we won't be able to be able to use the big fermenter, right?
No, we can use the big fermenter. We'll just do a ale.
Yeah. So, I mean, but we won't be able to cold crash. That's the reason I was thinking maybe.
You can cold crash after it's done fermenting. We just hook the system up and charge it. Yeah, absolutely use the new.
You think we'll have a?
We're going to have it in 10 days.
Oh, we will.
10 days is probably when we're going to cold crash.
Oh, okay. So you think we'll get the chiller by then?
Oh, we better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I already sent the order off for it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
See, James has his timeline down. He knows. You are.
So we can do anything we want then.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll talk about it.
So I hear all.
We don't want to bore everybody with. We don't want to bore everybody with what beer we're going to brew.
But the fact of the matter is we are out of Kolsch. And that's our go-to, always have on the tap beer.
God, because every time somebody comes to my house, that's what they want.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, I have 100 different beers in my cooler, and I have 6 beers on tap. What do you want this time? They're like, I want a Kolsch. I'm like, really? Come on, try something else.
Dude, I'm right here. Just say my name. Like, I'm right here.
Yeah, and I would love to have some at home. I don't have.
All right, let's do that. Let's plan on doing that then. Okay.
You said straightforward and simple. I mean, you were describing a Kolsch. I don't understand.
Right. That's true.
I've got some Kolsch yeast ready to pitch.
I don't want to bore the audience, but yeah, my dad and I this Saturday are brewing a Kolsch as well. So we'll have 10 gallons and it'll be the IPA we took to Easter, big hit. As a matter of fact, I left the keg there there was still plenty left because my family doesn't have drinking problems yet. But we had some, so we left it there because there's going to be a baby shower. There's a few events the month of May with family stuff. So we'll see if it makes it through the baby shower. And then if not, we'll bring it back and we'll hook it back up here. But I'm anticipating having the Kolsch be the first 5-gallon keg that I have on my home system that I've brewed and stay on my home system, not like be a share keg. Like, I'm really looking forward to it.
So is this a baby shower? Is that one of the new couples baby shower or a traditional baby shower?
No, it's the newer, it's the.
Oh yeah, because I drink fairly heavily at those. So if I was there, I would definitely be able to.
Well, that's why I made sure that we'd have beer. Oh yeah, come on, man! I am smarter than I look. But yeah, the IPA though, which was my dad and I's first all grain, it went over very well, and it's held up its integrity. It's still got its good flavor profile, good hops. It's not punch you in the face like we wanted, and it's held up well. So I've been very excited about that, and we're very excited to brew again. It is going to be a Kolsch, and I'm boring people to death on our Instagram with all the. It's not variety. It's just a crap ton of photos of me drinking Kolsch, but get over it.
You're not boring me to death, so don't worry about me.
No, I love it.
I'm in a phase.
I'm not on Instagram, so
I'm in a phase. Okay, every now and then I go through phases. But yeah,
we all.
That's a different conversation too. But anyway, we do have a couple questions today. You know how most episodes I try to field questions that are in the same genre of homebrewing. And today's show is more or less covering yeast topics. So the first question comes from our friend Kelly Green from Castle Rock, Colorado. I like that he put all that info in there. He writes, first of all, when Todd was in Denver last week and it snowed, it actually is common to get snowstorms in Colorado in the springtime. We also had snow on Friday and Saturday, then back to the 60s and 70s. Here's my 2 questions. On yeast packs, there is a temperature range on fermentation. is there any taste difference or advantage to ferment at the lower or higher temp of that range? And then the second part is, have you ever tried making mead? A new meadery in Castle Rock just opened up, and I didn't think I'd like it, but it was real good. I'm considering making mead sometime in the future. Shout out to Homebrew Meadery and 39N Homebrewers in Castle Rock. So let's start with the yeast, because that's also the first thing that he wrote in. It is interesting on different yeast pats, James, that there is sometimes a very wide range in temperature, right? I think Omega has one that's phenomenally wide. What do you think about that? What is the advantage or disadvantage, or why would you go on one end of the spectrum versus the other?
Well, it depends on how much of an estery profile you want. If you want that kind of profile, you're going to ferment at the higher end. And if you want a cleaner profile, less estery profile, for the most part, most yeast will describe that on the back of the pack in regards to the temperature range you ferment in. You want a cleaner, more neutral yeast, ferment at the colder side. If you want a more estery, fruitier, some people would say gamier profile, then you would ferment at the higher range.
Todd, when you are fermenting, now y'all are spoiled up there. Y'all have temperature control pretty much any time that you want it at. And I don't just mean like air conditioned home or temperature controlled home. I mean, y'all have it dialed in, but assuming, a lot of people don't have the luxury of glycol systems or even an air conditioner that they want to run in their house in the low 60s or whatever. Do you have a goal with fermentation in mind? Like, I'm going to brew this beer in July because the fermentation range is higher and I won't have to use as much resources to get it to a lower range?
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. There are yeasts that actually work better at higher temperatures. They're designed for higher temperatures, and it would make sense to brew that style of beer in the summer when it's really warm. Yeah, I mean, if a person didn't have temperature control system, hey, look at this. We did not plan this at all. We're both wearing Dusseldorf shirts today, huh?
Yeah, look.
Oh, must be.
How cool is that?
I just noticed that when you were wearing. We both bought these in different years, but we both. What is mine's? Mein Stadt, mein Bier, my town, my city, my beer, and
mine's Schlussel.
Schlussel.
That bit surprise there. And I've got my nice German Hawaiian shirt, but don't digress, Todd. We're in the middle of a question.
Oh, sorry, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have done that forever. I mean, that's the reason a lot of beer styles developed the way that they did, is because of the climate. It's no accident that that Germany has certain beer styles in certain regions, and England has different ones. A lot of it was really due primarily to the climate, and then I think as beer moved to other areas and the German styles and to some extent the British styles took over those areas, they had to make adjustments for the climate to be able to brew them properly.
Now, James, back to our specific situation up there at headquarters, you have total control over temperature, pretty much the entire process from the literal brewing to cold conditioning and right up to carbonation and serving. You're pretty dialed in. Do you have a preference, either that's like your rule of thumb, or does it vary from style to style on which end of the spectrum that you personally prefer in a fermentation temperature range?
Right. It depends on the style that I'm brewing, but typically I'm more apt to ferment on the colder side of any yeast I pitch, because the yeast has a lot to do with the character and flavor profile of the beer, but I kind of like to try to create the most balanced beer I can. I don't want one thing overpowering another. So that's why I tend to choose the more neutral style yeast blends. But there's some stuff out there. If you don't have temperature control, you can do farmhouse style ales. Omega was a good choice because they have some stuff that'll ferment up to 90 degrees, and they claim
90 degrees,
yeah, they won't create the off flavors that you would get with any other style. So that would be Todd and I and yourself. We talked about playing around with that, just hadn't got around to doing it. So I haven't personally used it, but I've heard people that do, and they swear by it.
Well, and the wheat beer is a really, really good example because you very specifically, depending on what you want, you can use the exact same yeast and use different temperatures to accent those banana flavor, clove flavors, whatever you like, more or less of those. So for you would prefer to brew a wheat beer at a much colder temperature.
Sure. Yeah.
Or ferment, I should say, not brew. And Josh Brown, who loves those, those banana clove flavors, would want to do it at a higher temperature with the same yeast.
And and Josh, we've mentioned him a few times. It's funny though. A lot of people at your headquarters, Todd, prefer that banana clove. And Nancy, who in the Kegconnection side,
Zach, I think.
Zach, your sales lead. Yeah, it is.
And even your wife, Todd, I think she likes that too, doesn't she?
She does, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's interesting though. How the temperature and the fermentation can cause such drastic results. And I say it's interesting. Like it's not like it's doesn't make sense to me. It's just when you sit and think like, man, 8 degrees can make a pretty big difference or whatever, or whatever range you're talking about. Now, the second part of Kelly's question, which is totally different subject off of yeast, but I've never made yeast. To my knowledge, none of us have, but I included this part of his question because Todd, recently we were reading, I guess, the latest edition of Joy of Homebrewing, and you were showing us is Charlie's what kind of meat is it? Darn it, now I'm blanking.
It's the tuna. Well, I call it a tuna meat, cactus meat. He's taking the cactus fruit from a prickly pear and using that. I was in San Antonio this weekend, and it's very, very common. One of their famous things there is that sometimes they call it a tuna margarita, sometimes they call it a cactus margarita, because in Spanish it's a tuna is that fruit. So that's on the top of a prickly pear that turns bright red, and they make a margarita out of that. Well, Charlie has a recipe for that. And you say we've never made mead, but I almost feel like I have, because I've been talking about doing it for so long. For like 10 years now, I've been talking about it. And by God, this year I'm going to do it, Josh.
Okay, it's recorded, so now you're held to it. Like I'm doing it. You have been talking about it for more than 10 years because you've been talking about it as long as I've known you. You've been talking about it, which is coming up in like 2 weeks. It'll be 11 years that I've known you in some form, shape, or form, some capacity. And you have always, even when the business was out of your home, and you brewed some extract kits, you would talk about mead. I believe it was the second edition of Charlie's book that you had back then. I don't know if you still even have that copy. You moved.
I think so. I think I still have all those copies. I like mead. I tend to like a little bit drier mead, and I don't know if that one may be a little sweeter, but it'll have that flavor that I like from that cactus fruit. So I think it'd be really fun to do. And since Charlie's retiring, I think it'd be a good send off. So
again, right? I mean, we're celebrating his retirement. Yeah. Like I think every year that's going to be their shtick is say bye to Charlie. Wait, we said bye to him.
Wasn't that 3 years ago?
Every year, man. Well, when you're gone, it's not wrong. It's saying goodbye again. He'll be there. I saw him at the Craft Brewers Conference. I can't imagine he'll be able to stay away from Homebrew Con. I know last year. Correct me if I'm wrong, Club Night didn't have as big of a presence with mead as it did in Minnesota the year before. And I think it's because there was like a mead and cider conference at the exact same time as Homebrew Con in Portland. But I hope this year in Rhode Island that the representation for Club Night is big again, because I remember, couldn't tell you the club's name. Whoever's listening, if you were at that table, let me know. I'd love to shout y'all out, because there was one club specifically for meads. Do you remember that, guys, in Minnesota?
Oh God, yeah. They had like a bunch of meads there.
Yeah, and they were wonderful. And that was the first time I had a mead and was like, man, this is solid. Because
if you remember, we had a mead in our goodie bag,
and I didn't like it. Full disclosure, I didn't like it. But there was some at that table, that club. I really wish I could remember the name. I bet you, if I ask Carrie from the AHA, she might be able to get a list of all the clubs that were in Minnesota. But they had some phenomenal meads, and they also had some meads I wasn't a fan of. But that's how it goes with any beverage, right? What beer, soda, mead, whatever. You can't like it all, or maybe you can. I don't like it all. But yeah, mead would be something cool for us to try. I actually want to try kombucha. Way left field from what we're talking about right now. But
well, because mead takes like a year to do, and kombucha takes like a day. I mean, kombucha is really easy. Yeah.
well, that's what I was
I
just
may be exaggerating on both ends, but yeah.
I was just saying, if I'm gonna try something that's not just my fancy sparkling water or beer, kombucha is what I want next. Mainly because my doctor.
You should do it. It's real easy to do.
I know, and I have the stuff. My doc, or as you lovingly referred to him as my quack, he thinks the probiotic benefits of kombucha would help me out.
Oh yeah, I think that would probably solve all of your health problems.
Okay, Kelly, thanks for writing into the show. We have one more question from Karen, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com as well. Karen wrote in, I found your show after doing a Google search for podcasts about making my own beer, and I wanted to first thank you for the great content. My boyfriend and I are new to homebrewing and are overwhelmed or possibly overthinking yeast. There are recipes online that give you a choice on what yeast we want with our recipe, but we don't really know what we want. Dry yeast, liquid yeast, how much of a difference does yeast make? Specifically, if it's a recommended yeast available to order alongside a recipe. For instance, is it just a difference in brands, or will one of the recommended yeast make the beer completely different from another recommended yeast? I hope this question makes sense and that you can help us on the show. Thanks, Karen. And she actually... she wrote in as well as a customer, and what she's referring to is any given website that offers recipes have yeast options. And,
Sure.
Because most recipes don't just come with the yeast, they want you, companies want you to be able to make the recipe your own, and yeast does make a difference. So what she's referring to is, well, there's 5 options, right, in any given recipe. What do I'm so overwhelmed. What do I do? So James, what would you say to address her question?
Well, the thing that's cool about our hobby and yeast in general is they all have really good informative websites. So you can go to Yeast especially. They have a really good. When you go into their strains, you can pick the style of beer that you're wanting to brew, and it'll show you what to expect from that given strain and the temperatures it works in. So I would say do a little research online with the manufacturers and choose which one you like and try it. And that's what I did.
Yeah, and also while you're online, actual Google brewing this style of beer with this yeast and this yeast. Somebody's done it, and a lot of times people will do what we do quite a bit here, which is we'll brew a 15-gallon batch of beer and then ferment it in 3 different vessels and use 3 different yeasts. And what we find is there's definitely a big difference if they're really a different yeast, but there are certain strains of yeast that all the manufacturers of yeast or producers of yeast make. So they'll have a different number on it or a different letter on it. But if you really read the description, it's exactly the same strain made by 4 different yeast companies. And they'll tell you that. They're not secretive about it. They'll say, yeah, it's the same as so-and-so's yeast, because it's all coming from the same strain.
Right. And a lot of the marketing, though, that they distinguish themselves from each other would be like cell count, right, James?
Sure. Yeah. Now, and then also I would say this too. If she goes to CMBecker.com on that main page, go down to the bottom, that's my contact information. If she's wanting to know my opinion, she can always email me and I can point her in the right direction if she's just not real sure where to go.
Right. And that would be, again, on a case by case, because like you said, different recipes that may have a gazillion yeast options.
Sure.
And you'll help with walking her through, like, hey,
absolutely,
this one you would use if this is the flavor profile you're going for, or whatever kind of notes that you want more forward. Yeah, I like what you said about Yeast. White Labs.
It was Yeast.
Oh, Yeast. Pardon me. White Labs does too. You know what? All of them. I have to give most yeast companies credit.
They do, and you're right. They do also have a good selection tool. I was just impressed at the detail that went in with the Yeast.
Yeah, Yeast is very impressive. They've been around forever. What was the name? How do we determine how to pronounce it? The people who we're going to be working with on the Kolsch, Todd,
Lallemand.
Lallemand is how.
Texan Layman.
Yeah, Layman. I bring them up too because Karen did make a point to ask dry yeast, liquid yeast. That company, of which I am butchering the name, is very well known for their dry yeast. Is there a time, James, where you would say, I'm going to do dry yeast specifically versus liquid yeast?
If you live in an area and it's summertime and you're concerned about, packing, because liquid yeast needs to stay cold to be viable. And if it's summertime and you're worried about that, go with a dry yeast. It transports a lot easier and it's not as delicate and fragile. And you know what? Most of the time there's higher than 100 billion cells in a dry yeast pack versus, the standard 100 billion cells in what the competitors sell.
Todd,
in liquid form.
Todd, what do you think my brain works in different ways. We know that, but I have always had a perception that liquid yeast is better for whatever reason. With the IPA recipe that Joe made for us, we ended up using a dry yeast, and it was very vigorant fermentation. It was quick. It wrapped up quick, and the end result was wonderful. That was my first time using dry yeast. Believe it or not, and it was a fantastic experience. I have no idea. I think the perception, from what I gather online, I'm not alone. A lot of people have that perception.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily better. I think there's just a lot more choices in liquid yeast. So I guess it's very expensive to make a dry yeast run, and so they don't have 50 different kinds of dry yeast. Whereas with liquid yeast, there's more than 50 different kinds of liquid yeast. And when I say that, I should preface that by saying for the homebrew industry, I know they have a lot more for the actual brewing industry, because you're buying in a lot larger quantity and they're not having to put it in those little bitty satchels. So there's just not as many varieties in the dry yeast, and that does limit some of your flavor profiles on certain styles, depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Interesting. That is, that I didn't even consider that. You're right. The production, it has to be, I have to take that into consideration, why there is so much more option, because it does seem like liquid yeast is what's pushed the most. But again, by default, it's probably pushed the most because there is so much variety and selection. There are many yeast companies that don't make dry at all, right? Like they only do liquid.
Right.
But yeah, that dry, I forget which one it was that Joe put in the pack, but I had a great experience with it. And I know, James, you have recommended on our previous episodes before that storing it, like you have put your dry yeast in your freezer and it lasts for a long time, right?
Yeah, it does. In fact, I do a lot of bread baking. I even do my bread yeast in the freezer, and it seems to take a lot longer to go bad.
Yeah, I know that for me is a pro, just because sometimes you get your ingredients. Like my dad and I have had that Kolsch recipe ready to go for like 3 weeks now, and we haven't brewed. And fortunately, the ingredients that we get it from, which is Mr. Burns, who, thank you for joining us again, Todd. Saw you back out of the video link, but we are able. I don't have to worry about expiration dates, but some people, they get their ingredients, and man, maybe sometimes their brew day unfortunately gets pushed back a lot. Dry yeast, like you said, you just pop it in the freezer and then rehydrate it when it's time to go, right?
That's right. And sometimes, some instances, depending on what you're trying to brew, you may need to do a starter with the dry yeast. It's all about cell count and numbers versus gravity. So the higher the gravity, the higher the cell count. Sometimes it's easier if you're using dry yeast to do one of those, to do a starter and to build enough numbers for pitchable amount per given batch. So
right.
A lot of people prefer dry yeast over liquid. I just happen to like liquid, and I really love imperial yeast because they give you that higher cell count for that pitch where you don't have to mess with starters.
Todd, maybe it would be in our best interest to start putting links in the recipes just to the landing pages of the website. So like, hey, do you want more information on the Y yeast that's available here?
Yeah, we've done that on particularly some of the yeast by themselves. They have a link to go over to that specific product's website or landing page.
Right. No, I know, on the individual listing of the yeast. Yeah. We do some cross-linking in the recipes, because I know, like what Karen's saying here, a lot of people, we make the ordering process, whether it's for your recipes or for your drafting systems or whatever, try to make it as straightforward as possible, but also allow for customization, because no two people are the same. period. We have seen there's a million different variations. Any given recipe kit or draft system kit can be configured, and we've seen them all, I think. But then every other day, it's like, oh, there's a new way that someone's ordering it or wants to order it. And so with yeast, I don't know if it's going to be drastically like. You shouldn't be overwhelmed is what I'm getting at, Karen. But in the same sense, like James said, there is just some level of homework you're going to have to do to if you know for a fact you want a certain kind of flavor profile, do your homework on the yeast that are best recommended for that style of beer. And then, read, hey, when you use this yeast and you ferment at this temperature, this is what's going to come forward. And that'll help you make your most informed decision, in my opinion. Right?
I agree. Yeah.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I've used, the highest cell count, best liquid yeast you could possibly use in a batch of beer, and it didn't turn out well. And I've, sprinkled a little dry yeast on the top and closed the lid before, and it turned out great. So a lot of it has to do with the other parts of the brewing process and what you did wrong and did right. So, you can, nothing's fail safe, but I will say, like when we use the Imperial with a 200 million cell count, I don't think we've ever had a stuck fermentation with that, have we, James?
Nope, not yet.
Yeah, that was James knocking on wood.
Yes,
I love it.
I second that knock.
Yeah.
Everyone's knocking right now.
Because there's nothing worse than putting all that time, effort, and money into a batch of beer and it sticks.
Yeah,
it's just, to me, I'm Todd, I'm sure you and Josh are the same way. I can't drink sweet beer. I just can't do it. I fought through it years ago because of the pride factor, but now if it sticks at 10, 20 or so, I'm more apt to just throw it away if I can't save it.
Or you share it. You're very. Yeah. I noticed you're more generous.
Yeah, I came it to everybody else.
Hey, try this beer. No, I say that you are always generous, but I know when you feel like the brew is not your best is because you preface before I sip for about 5 minutes so that I don't judge you. When I'm not, I've never you're what you think is a bad beer is what I would show off to all my family members, but that's a whole other episode. But,
well, the funny thing too is James is very critical of his beer, and then 3 weeks later, that same beer is just phenomenal. So sometimes we just try it too early,
Yeah, I don't have patience.
Exactly. Well, Karen, thank you for writing in. Guys, that's wrap-up time. I appreciate the stormy day. I heard y'all have over 3 inches of rain up there right now.
Yeah, over 3.5 now.
It's crazy, and it's raining. It just started up again.
Yeah, it's raining right now.
Yeah, please stay safe, but I appreciate y'all taking the time out of your day to do the show with me, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Sure. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, and that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page. Now you can call or text your questions in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, Kegconnection.com, for supporting our podcast and the home brewing community. Go to Kegconnection.com right now, use our promo code HHH, and you'll receive 5% off your order. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.